Hey everybody, welcome to Behavior Bites. My name is Brad.
And I'm Mike, and we're also joined by our producer, Aaron.
Hello. All right, you guys, this is a very special episode of Behavior Bites that is dedicated and directed at our paraeducators. We love them, Mike.
We do. You guys are the lifeblood of our schools. You are there for our students every day, and honestly, our districts just couldn't run without you. So what we did today, and what we're doing right now, is we've got 5 tips that can potentially make your job a little easier, make you a bit more effective with working with your students, and just like some high yield stuff that Brad and I have noticed over the years.
Yeah, so Mike and I both have backgrounds in special education. We've worked with paras a lot. I was a para when I got my start in education, so just please know how much we appreciate the work that you do. Here's what you're going to notice, is that as opposed to our normal fast-paced Behavior Bites video, this is going to be a little bit longer form, a little bit more of a discussion. So it's slightly longer, but we really hope you understand the different tips that we're talking about. So let's start with 5 tips for working with your students. And I'm going to toss it to you first, Mike. Let's talk about visual timers. I love timers.
I do too, and okay, here's the thing, is we all walk around with a timer in our pocket right now. Mm-hmm. And they're a visual timer, the ones that count down. I think sand timers are great as it's a visual timer. I think actual stopwatches are great. So, the timer you're using isn't all that important, but they're there. The reason that I like them is that it's it's like an implied limit. So, hey, I'll give you 2 minutes to finish up this task. That's 2 minutes. That's real clearly defined. It removes a lot of the arguments they might have. It kind of keeps us on track. And I'm going to tell you, Brad, and maybe you've noticed this too, sometimes the timer isn't necessarily for the kid.
Yeah.
It's for me, right?
I'm glad that you said that, because that's what I was sitting here thinking about. I was like, all the times that my students would come in, and whether they're taking a break or whether they are working on an activity or they're lying down because they're tired, I'll say something like, hey, yeah, you want to go lie down for 10 minutes? You want to lie down for 15 minutes? You want to take a 10-minute break? That's fine. If I forget about it, and I'm an adult with ADHD and I've got a million different things on my plate, if I forget about it, you better believe my student is going to forget about it while they're playing with Legos. So it helps keep me honest and get my kids back to class on time. It keeps classroom teachers happier too.
Yeah, I think they're great.
Let's talk about responses, being consistent. You guys, this is a drum that I beat all the time. Being consistent in how you respond to kids. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so if kids know what to expect when if they do something and we are consistent with what we're doing and they know what to expect from us, it kind of builds in that routine a little bit. It removes that kind of uncertainty with the kids. It keeps, that's another thing that kind of keeps me on task. When I know how I'm going to respond, then I don't have to think of it on the fly.
Yeah, think about the kids that you guys have worked with. We've all been there, where you need them to complete a task, and they are digging their heels in, right? If we can be as predictable as possible, then we're going to get more compliance from our students, right? If my students know exactly how I'm going to react every time, then they're able to predict my behavior, and they're going to be more likely to comply with what I want them to do.
So I'm thinking of something where we're kind of rolling in one of the other strategies that we talk about a lot, like a when-then statement. So if you have a student that's kind of whiny and I don't want to do this, like if sometimes you're like, oh, sweetie, we can do that. If that's sometimes your response, and sometimes your response is, no, you need to get to work, it's just that like gray uncertainty, as opposed to, hey, when your voice matches mine, then we can work. And if that's your stock, standard, consistent response, the kids know what to expect from it, and it just keeps things smooth.
Yeah. So here's the other thing with having a consistent response. If a student's doing something that I don't like, what I don't want to do is respond emotionally, right? I want to try to keep my emotions out of it. And so if I have a planned out, if this kid does this, then I'm going to do this. It's going to keep me from having a knee-jerk reaction. And again, it kind of helps smooth the whole situation out at the end, right? Be consistent.
Yeah. Okay, so number 3, it kind of falls within a lot of there's almost a theme going on with some of the stuff that we're doing here about keeping things how do I even want to say this? Like a routine, kind of structured, manageable format. Yeah. So number 3 is chunking tasks into manageable parts.
Right, so I love that manageable part, okay? think about we all have worked with kids who dig in their heels when we need them to do what we're being directed, right? The special education teacher or the teacher is saying, hey, Brad, I need you to do this with this kid. And the kid's like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. All right. So if my student needs to complete a worksheet, then what I want to do is break that apart. Okay. Like, look, you don't want to do 10 problems? I get it. Why don't we do 2? We'll do 2. We'll take a short break. Hey, let's do 2 more. That wasn't so bad. Let's take a short break, right? You break it up into manageable chunks so where they don't get overwhelmed, overloaded, and just dig in their heels and forget and refuse to do it, right?
Yeah, and one thing that I know is I'm going to use this worksheet as an example here. If I can make it visual and that they can see it, so on the worksheet, I will maybe circle the first 2 or 3, whatever that first chunk is, so they can see this is what we need to accomplish now, then break. Then we do these 3, then break. Anything where we can add a visual component to it, I find that a lot of our special education students respond really well to that.
Yeah, so, and that ties in really well to when we want students to work independently. Again, especially students where it's hard. If I've got 5 math problems that I'm supposed to do with this student, then maybe I say, hey, Mike, listen, I get you don't want to do this. I get that it's hard, right? I'm going to do this first one, and then you're going to do the next one. Yeah. Or maybe if I have a good relationship with Mike, I'll say, hey, we got to get all these done. I'll leapfrog with you. Do you want to do the first one or the second one, right? So if there's 10 problems, then I say, okay, we have to do all 10 of these, even though I really only want them to do 5. We're going to do all 10 of these, but we're going to take turns, right? Yeah. So they're still doing the same amount of work that I wanted them to do, but by breaking it up, it's more manageable. It's more accessible for them.
These last 2 that we're going to talk about today, this is the heart of the job of a para, so I'm pretty excited to talk about these. So, and honestly, when you and I were talking about this, you mentioned something that just I thought was amazing. And number 2 is pairing.
Yeah.
Tell me your thoughts on that, Brad.
Well, first of all, I'd like to point out how nice it is that you think what I said was amazing.
Well,
thanks, Mike. I am pretty amazing. So let's talk about pairing. So pairing is, simply put, building and maintaining rapport or a positive relationship with your student. That's what pairing is. But that just doesn't magically happen, right? And it doesn't magically happen by me saying, do this, now do this, now do this. It happens when I kind of let my guard down, when I show this kid that I'm a human, that I'm a person, and I recognize you're a person. So we do things together. I used to schedule pairing with my paras and my students. I would schedule pairing, especially at the beginning of the year, or if we were hitting a particularly rough patch during the year, because we've all been there as well. And it was funny because the first time I ever had a para do that, I said, hey, I want you to spend some time just doing some pairing with this student. And my para loved her to death, but she didn't know what that meant. So she gave her a reinforcer. It was one of my higher needs students. She gave her a ball and then just sat back like this. Okay, I'm doing pairing. I'm letting her play with the ball. And that's not what it is, because it wasn't between, you're a pair. So it wasn't between the 2 of them, right?
Right.
So find out what the student likes to do, or come up with something that you can engage, like do a puzzle with them, draw a picture with them, play a game with them, right? Have some fun with the kid. If it's one of my more high need students who isn't going to be an Uno candidate, right? But they like rolling a ball back and forth. Let's roll the ball back and forth, because all you're doing is building that relationship. So, and the more comfortable my student is with me, the more likely it is that they're going to do what I want them to do.
Which I love, and I think about that as an investment. So if we spend 2 or 3 minutes doing a pairing activity of some sort, and then we can get to work and they're willing to work a little bit harder for us, as opposed to fighting and tussling and kind of smashing heads a little bit for 10 minutes. That 2-minute little pairing activity is a heck of a good investment. I love that.
Mike mentioned these last 2 are like 2 of the just most important ones. So pairing. Why do we pair? It's so that we can get to number 1, and that is know your kid. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, so know your kid, and you folks are so good at this. And I mean, I will talk to staffs at school about this type of thing. If you're not really sure what makes a certain kid what drives a certain kid, go talk to their para, because they know. They know this about their kid. So knowing your kid, knowing what they're capable of at that time, you know when that kid comes in more than anybody else. If they're in a spot where they can accomplish a ton of
Oh,
stuff,
yeah.
you know if maybe today they need a little bit of grace before we can get to the work. You know that, and respect your instincts on that, because they're good, they're strong.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Think about those kids that that only if you're a paraeducator, where the second Billy walks in the door, you know how that day's going to go, right? You're like, oh man, it's going to be a hard morning. And so I know when he has a hard morning, if I do this and this and this, it's going to run a little bit more smoothly. You're the expert. Well, we become the expert by getting to know our student, what makes them tick. We do that through pairing, right? We do that through having conversations with them and observation of the time that we spend with them. So you're going to be the expert on this kid. My paras knew what made my students tick better than I did. And when I was a para, I knew what made those students tick better than their teachers did, because of the time that you and the emotions that you invest into that kid. So know your kid and use that to make him do what you want him to do.
Should we? Let's run through the list one last time.
Okay.
So we got visual timers, awesome strategy to use. Consistent responses, love it. Chunking tasks into manageable parts, super great stuff. Pairing, building those relationships with kids, like lifeblood of what we do. And then know your kid and trust it.
Yeah.
So, right. So
Yeah. Listen, paraeducators, you are the lifeblood of our schools, and we're being very sincere when we say that. We could not do our jobs without you. So this was a little bit longer video for a Behavior Bites video, but we really wanted to make sure that you had some things that could help out. If you have any questions or any thoughts, complaints, gripes, anything like that, my goodness, please reach out to us. We'd love to help out. In the meantime, go forth, do good things.